Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Monday morning the 8th of September. In this video we're going to Nova Scotia to the case of missing siblings 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan from Lansdowne Station. A few days ago I did a video all about scent dogs. I've got a bunch of videos across different cases where I've talked about search dogs, but a few days ago I did a standalone video all about the differences between different types of live scent tracking dogs. Tracking versus trailing versus air scent dogs. I showed some examples. I also talked about the differences between air scent and ground scent and what those things mean and what dogs are doing when they're air scenting versus ground scenting. What I didn't do in that video was anything about cadaver dogs. Now, I've talked about cadaver dogs lots. Again, it's across different cases. I even talked about cadaver dogs in this case earlier on in the case because it baffles me. It absolutely baffles me why cadaver dogs don't appear to have been used in this case. So we're going to talk about that again and the importance of using cadaver dogs. I just don't understand why cadaver dogs have not been brought in. Let's talk about that. Before we do, can I please ask once again, if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. YouTube sends everybody who gets 100,000 subscribers a silver play button plaque for their wall, and I would love one. So please help me out and subscribe. It's completely free. Just click the subscribe button, that's all you need to do. Okay, so what is a cadaver dog? Well, cadaver dogs are trained to detect the scent of human remains. Most cadaver dogs are taught to sniff out the scent of decomposition. When a body starts to decompose, it starts to produce various chemicals, and they can be detected by humans. Once a body has been dead for a few hours, the body starts to take on a characteristic, really horrible smell. If you've ever smelt the scent of decomposition, whether it be from a human or another animal, you will know that that smell is unforgettable. It's just a really pungent, horrible smell. But the human nose is very weak compared to that of a dog, and dogs can detect just a tiny amount of decomposition. They're trained to differentiate between human decomp scent and that of other animals. Sometimes you get false positives if there's animal remains. Certain animals have got a more similar decomp scent to those of humans. Pigs, for example, are pretty close. And also things like sewage. So if a sewage pipe has burst at some point in the past, human sewage also contains the molecules that are released when decomposition occurs. So dogs can be inaccurate for a bunch of different reasons. So the training and obviously the ability of the handler is very important, as it always is, right? You're only as good as your training, whether you are a dog or a human. Other types of cadaver dogs are trained to detect ancient remains, like old remains, skeletonized remains, and the scent of bones. It's somewhat specialist. The majority of cadaver dogs are trained to detect decomp. Some also blood, some only blood. Blood's different, smells different. So some cadaver dogs are trained on blood, some are not. And some dogs are trained just on blood detection dogs. I want to show you a couple of examples of cadaver dogs. This is wilderness search and rescue dogs. Now, this is one of the videos that I showed an example from the other day when I did my live scent tracker dog video. And what I didn't show in that video was anything about cadaver dogs, because the video wasn't about cadaver dogs. But they do have an example of a human remains detection dog here. So I'm going to play you this.
I'll do is check the air, see what the wind is doing. And it's blowing up this way. Her command is just to search. She does only human detection.
So this is a Doberman, and this dog only does human remains detection. Some dogs are cross-trained, So they might be trained on human remains, they might also be trained on various other things. Some dogs are cross-trained on both live scent and the scent of dead bodies. There are some problems with dogs that are cross-trained, and there has been studies done to show that a dog that is trained on both, if it goes into a disaster area where there's been dead bodies, that dog trying to detect a live scent amongst all of that debris, it becomes more difficult for the dog because it's trained to alert on dead bodies. So if you give it a command just to search for live scent, then it can easily get confused. So cross-trained dogs in disaster zones are deemed not as productive when they are cross-trained. But in a normal situation, like a missing person situation, a cross-trained dog, I assume, would be fine. But I think probably most dogs are trained either on live scent or on decomp. But anyway, this dog is just trained on human remains, and the dog is off. So the dog is doing very much what Cassie does when she's trying to find my hat or a phone. Cassie's trained to detect articles of clothing and also electronics, phones, SIM cards, etc. So when you watch Cassie searching, she does very similar to this. She just like wanders around. It looks like she's wandering aimlessly, but she's not. She's trying to detect a scent, and Cassie's air scenting. When she detects the scent, then she starts to ground search, and it appears this dog is doing this as well.
Good girl.
So this dog is trained to sit when she detects the scent.
So it's underneath the slats in the wood there. Good dog.
And then she's got her reward, which is a ball, once she's detected. So that's how it's done. Basically, human remains detection is just article detection. It's just another scent. Dogs can be trained to detect any scent, really. And I found this interesting video here. And this is actually about RCMP, police dogs. So very relevant to Lilly and Jack's case. I looked up what are police dogs with the RCMP trained to detect. So there's this, I'll leave a link to this in the description box. There's a little bit about their breeding program, and they are training tracking, and they're also training on article detection. So this is the RCMP and their dogs.
We have our general duty dogs, and we train them for tracking, criminal apprehension, searching of evidence.
So all of their police dogs have got basic tracking training, like to track somebody who's hiding, committed a criminal offence and is hiding, and also criminal apprehension as well.
Tracking probably is one of the hardest things to teach the dog. They're following, I'm not even sure how to describe how faint a human scent is on the ground that's mixed in with so many other things, and they're able to sort that out while still pulling a dog handler along behind them. So it's incredibly physically demanding on the dog, especially in the heat, and the concentration that they must have and focus is just unbelievable that they can do that.
So the tracking profile, as it's designed, is the dog will take the first human track that it's presented to.
This is really important. The first human track. So these are not scent-specific dogs. They're not given an article of someone who's missing and are just out sniffing out that particular scent. The first strong human scent they find, they follow it. Which is great if a criminal has just run off, if there's a crime in progress and a criminal has run off and is hiding, because that scent's going to be really fresh. Not so good when you're searching for somebody who has been missing hours or certainly not days. And in the case of Lilly and Jack, where there were so many people out searching, then it's somewhat not surprising why they've not been able to locate Lilly and Jack, if indeed Lilly and Jack are out there, because the ground was so contaminated with other scent, which is such a shame.
That's why we stress to preserve the area where the person was last seen.
Yeah, preserve the area. Preserve the area. Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, if the members are walking around that area, when I take my dog to that area, the first, most fresh track will likely be some member who is wandering around using his eyes, which we know is ineffective, when I could be using my dog to use his nose.
Now, look, in the real world, when, you know, you've got a missing kid, people want to help, people want to go out there. But in those very early stages, get the dogs out as early as possible before that ground becomes too contaminated. And I'm afraid we've seen this with the boot print, with the cops not knowing whether the boot print that they found was potentially either Lilly or Jack's. We know that it's the same size boot as Lilly was wearing, but they were still confused as to whether it might have been one of the searcher's children. That has confused matters in this case, that people were out there searching with their kids, well-meaning, but that area was not preserved. So the fact that dogs were sent to the areas where things were found, but no track was found, well, it could well be that that scent was not there in the first place, or it's being contaminated. Now, these dogs who are non-scent specific, they're just out finding the strongest, most original human scent that's there, they will disregard their handler's scent. They'll also disregard any scent that comes from the people in their party, so the flankers. You can see here you've got a handler and a couple of other people. They're flanking, they're looking for clues, and the dog will not alert to their scent because it will be able to differentiate between the people in their party and a scent that's original. But still, if this scene has been recently contaminated, then a dog is just going to be thrown off. Not the dog's fault at all.
So the dog is taught that once I bring him or her to the freshest track, they indicate it and they pursue it until the conclusion of the track. So basically we would start with our 10-week-old puppies by literally putting...
So that dog is actually tracking footprints.
Little tiny pieces of hot dog wiener along a little trench that a human has walked. And then we just gradually progress till it gets harder and harder and longer and older and more difficult. And then you end up in the formal training environment.
So during tracking exercises, there's an imaginary line or a scent trail that a person leaves on the ground and the dog is following. And there's lots of things that can affect that. And, you know, the wind, it's not like following a chalk line on the road. So when the dog handler is working the dog, they're going to be up and down the leash. That's how we communicate with the dog is through our leash. The dog will get to a spot, it'll lift its head up and it'll kind of fall off the track, or it might come to a corner of the track, and we call that circling. So the dog just circled around until it relocates the track or comes back across the track, and then you can usually see it in the body of the dog and the head, it snaps, and then it'll try to follow again, and that's where the line will get tighter and it'll start pulling. But when you see the circling there, it's because there's no actual scent for it to follow right in that spot, so it's trained to circle around. The concept is that if we lose the track at point A, if we do a circle right around that point, we should find it going away from it.
Interesting. All right, let's look at article detection. This is great. This equipment that they've got, I need this equipment. This is what Cassie does, article detection.
Every dog team has a special search profile, and that would be either narcotic detection, explosive detection, or human remain detection. And the main reason...
So some of their police dogs do have human remains training. So where are they? Why have they not been used in Lilly and Jack's case?
The reason we can't mix those is, for instance, if we had a dog that was trained in narcotics and explosives and he was doing a search in an airport and he indicated on something, do we evacuate that airport or do we open it up and take out? We don't know. So that's why we...
All right, so they don't cross-train. They don't train a dog to detect drugs and explosives. That would be very silly. Now, how many of their dogs are cross-trained to do human remains as well as other things? They don't say.
Don't cross-train them. It's better just have their own single profile.
Let's go, buddy. So the detection room is something fairly new to the Police Dog Service Training Center. The holes are designed so you have a series of low holes, a series of high holes. The trainer will attach what we call a popper on the outside, and a Kong or a ball goes into the popper, and it's remote controlled by the trainer. So when the appropriate behavior is shown by the dog, the trainer can release the ball and it shoots out. And then the dog...
That's so good. So instead of throwing the ball for the dog, when the dog finds the correct hole where the scent is, then the ball pops out. Clever. Or you could just give your dog a reward.
Dog will eventually go, well, what just happened here? The ball came out. And then they go on to more holes. And again, they stick their nose in a hole that has that smell. The dog shows a change in behavior. The ball comes out again. Now the dog starts saying, oh, the holes that smell like that are the holes where I get paid. And then all we do is we start progressing, and then we'll add the sit. So then the dog goes, oh, okay, so first I check the holes. Then I find the one that smells the way they want it to smell. Then I sit. Now the ball comes out.
Look, this is all very interesting. We know that at least some of the dogs that are trained through the RCMP program do have human remains detection training. So I want to know why human remains detection dogs were not used in Lilly and Jack's case. Now, this is the press conference from the 7th of May. And one of the journalists actually asked a question about cadaver dogs.
Lindsay Armstrong with the Canadian Press. I'm wondering, I understand canine unit have been involved. Have cadaver dogs been involved at this point?
Have cadaver dogs been involved at this point?
I don't believe cadaver dogs have been involved at this point yet.
Will they become involved? And I'd also like to circle back to Blair's question on survivability. If you can give a little bit more detail there about how you're making the equation, bringing in cadaver dogs and discussing survivability.
So cadaver dogs could be the next step in terms of part when we talk about scaling back. That could be another option that we now look at using.
They might bring cadaver dogs in. Well, why didn't you? Because there's nothing at all in the court documents that we've read. My live stream yesterday, I read the most recent court document in its entirety, and there was no mention of cadaver dogs. Not in any part of the search. No mention of cadaver dogs. There's mention of air scent dogs. There's mention of taking a dog to the area where the blanket was found. But there's no mention of cadaver dogs. Up to the 16th of July, which is the most recent document we've got, they haven't reported anywhere that cadaver dogs were used. Have there been since? Maybe. Unlike live scent trackers, where time is of the essence and the sooner you can get the dog out there, the better, cadaver dogs not quite the same. Because if a body has been laying out for some time, that scent is still going to be there. It sinks into the earth. It's difficult to get rid of the scent of decomp once a body has been in that area. So we saw this in the Michael Vaughan case in Idaho. If the cops believe that Michael was buried in someone's backyard, but then the body was moved, because every cadaver dog that they took to that backyard alerted in the same place. So that gives just very strong indication that Michael's body, or at least a dead body, had been there in someone's suburban backyard at some point, but not there now. So the logical assumption is that Michael was moved. In this case, if somebody hid their bodies, then a dog would be able to alert on a place where the bodies had been stored. And then if the body's no longer there, then the assumption you can make is that body's been moved. You got to clean up an area very, very well to get rid of minute amount of decomp that can be detected by a dog. Now, if you move a very freshly dead person, you know, literally they've just died and you move them, then there's no scent. It does take a few hours for the scent of decomp to become strong enough for a human to detect it. There's question marks about how soon after death the dog can detect. Maybe 2 hours is somewhat reliable for a dog to be able to detect, so 2 hours after death. But there is a question mark about that. So they're not supersonic, these dogs, but they are very useful. And I just don't understand. I don't get it. I'll never understand it. I'd like the RCMP to explain why they chose not to use human remains dogs in the search for Lilly and Jack, given that on the 7th of May, They toned down their search because they said they believed Lilly and Jack were dead. So at that point, did they not think that getting cadaver dogs out might be useful? I don't understand it. Alright guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you in the next video.